My writing really began with writing articles for journals, and in particular for the Baptist magazine in the Netherlands, as it existed at that time. And that runs in the family in a way. My father-in-law was one of the editors of the Dutch Baptist magazine for quite a while. And then my wife also was in that position for a while. And at a certain moment, I got the bug, and I wrote a couple of articles for the Baptist magazine, and I submitted them, and they were published. And I remember vividly one day attending a service in celebration of an anniversary of a minister who had been in ministry, I think, for 25 years. And that was a great Baptist celebration. And I was so enthusiastic about it that I wrote a very glowing article, and they published it. And then I thought, hey, by writing articles, I can influence people, I can encourage them. But that was not at an early age. I was almost 30, I think, when that came. Then, not so long after, I was myself elected as an editor of that periodical, the Dutch Baptist magazine. And there were always elections, and there were candidates. And in that election, I beat one of the sitting editors to become a new, young, vibrant editor. And I enjoyed that very much. I had only been an editor of that Baptist magazine for a couple of months when the editor-in-chief had a terrible accident and was out of action for a long time. And to my surprise, they approached me the day after and they said, can you act up? Can you be the lead editor for the time that this other person is out of action? And I did. And because I can organize things reasonably well, I flourished as the acting editor-in-chief of the Baptist magazine. And I did that for quite a few years and really enjoyed all the aspects of it. But that then was just putting a magazine together, writing articles myself. My first book, in fact, was my PhD. I worked towards a PhD, a qualification in theology. And the result then is a book that you can publish. It's normally published. And so my PhD was published, but that's on something rather obscure, so I hardly ever talk about it, and it's not particularly relevant for the church, just because in a university in the Netherlands they don't expect you to do anything relevant. It's just scholarly work. The next book then came about when the editor of a series of commentaries approached me, and that was when I was still in the Netherlands. And this guy was the editor of a series of Bible commentaries in which all kinds of reformed people were writing on the books of the New Testament. And this gentleman approached me and said, can you write a commentary on the Johannine epistles for me, please? And I said, Professor, you're mistaken. I'm not reformed in the sense that you're reformed. I'm a Baptist. No, he said, I know, but I want you to write on the Johannine epistles. He was probably aware that baptism is not mentioned in the Johannine epistles, so I couldn't do much harm there. And so I did that. I wrote that commentary. But by the time I started writing it, I had already been appointed here at Spurgeon's College. So I had a new full-time job and a new culture to adjust to. So it took quite a while before the commentary was written, and I had to disappoint the professor a little bit with deadlines. But I was open and honest to him, so he was still my friend when the book was finished. And that came out, my commentary on the Johannine epistles. Then the next thing again was a commission when the publisher, the editor of many reference books, Martin Menser, asked me to help him in writing an introduction to the whole Bible. But that was going to be a very bulky book, over 600 pages. So I said to Martin Menser, I'm quite happy to do that with you, but I can't do that on my own, and the two of us can't do it. So we found two other people who did the Old Testament between them, and I did the New Testament on my own. And it was only by that time, and then I was in my mid-40s, that I started thinking of books that I could write on my own initiative. And that's basically what I've been doing since. I now think of something that I want to write about, and I write it. And that means that I've done volumes of Bible studies on the book of Revelation, my favorite book, on the book of Acts, and also on Johannine epistles again. And I then did a book on the importance of the Old Testament, things in the Old Testament that you don't find in the New, but which are still very relevant. And in that way, I kept myself going and writing. on subjects that I think of myself. Many of my books begin life in Dutch, and then I translate them into English. It's easier to get published in the Netherlands because there's more demand for Christian books and not so much on offer, although there's still quite a sizable market. Here in England, it's much harder to get published. I remember when I had written this book on the Old Testament, that I offered it to publishers, and quite a few just said no, without asking for any details. And one of them came back and said, oh, we already have a book on the Old Testament. We don't need a second book on the Old Testament. I thought, go away. But in the end, I got published, although still not by major publishing companies. And I enjoy writing a lot, and I hope that I will be able to write a few more books if God gives me the time and the energy.